Hi there, Shanda.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Oh, it's so good to see you too.
Let me introduce you. Okay. So, everybody, our next speaker, our next guest is Shanda Miller. I'm very pleased to have her with us. Shanda is a champion for personal and professional development and loves to coach others and help them reach their dreams. She's the best-selling author of From Supervisor to Super Leader: How to Break Free from Stress and Build a Thriving Team that Gets Results. Her leadership purpose is to inspire and guide others to live their version of an extraordinary life. She seeks to help team leaders break free from stress and overwhelm and lead their teams to high performance. Thank you, Shanda, for being here. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have to say, I've been watching some of the other speakers today, and you've had some amazing conversations so far, and I just appreciate being a part of this.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you. Uh, you referred to the term super leader. What does that mean, and what are some of the key qualities that go into being a super leader?
Yeah, so for me, the two main qualities that go into being a super leader is being an intentional leader and being a supportive leader. So first, supportive leader is having a heart-centered approach and being committed to building trust. I've heard trust talked about a lot today.
And
Creating,
heart.
yeah, creating strong relationships
Mhm.
and helping team members to develop and overcome their challenges. So this style of leadership is also called servant leadership. And you may have heard the phrase, leadership, it's not about you. So really, leadership is about serving others. And then the other key that I mentioned was being intentional. And this ties also into being a supportive leader. So being intentional about being a supportive leader, but also being intentional includes having your own personal leadership purpose. Leading with intention also means that really you're intentional about everything that you do as a leader. You're intentional about how you organize your day and spend your time. Each meeting you schedule has an intention and a specific outcome or decision. You're intentional about building relationships. You're intentional in your communications, whether that be with each conversation that you have or in your emails. And then the systems that you have, I'm a systems person. So the systems
Okay.
that you have to lead and manage your team are also intentionally designed.
Mhm.
Uh, and then another key to being an intentional leader is to understand yourself. What do you value? What is most important to you? And it's really critical to understand your role, the purpose of your position, the objectives of your team. And once you know what is most important to you and your team, you must fight for those things. You must be intentional. So, for example, making sure you have enough time to spend on those important things. And this sometimes takes assertiveness. It takes having an attitude that you're going to find a way, no matter what, to align your actions to what is most important.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so intention, one key to being a super leader, and then also being a supportive leader.
I really appreciate the notion of intention, because to me it says I'm guiding, I'm directing where I'm going, as opposed to what happens much of the time with people is we're on automatic. We're just following what we did a moment ago, what we did yesterday. Intention gives us the opportunity to do it a new way, a different way, and to um, interact with the environment with the ability to make adjustments. So I can appreciate that. Um, in line with my own belief that outer results begin with inner awareness and work, you say the biggest personal transformations and breakthroughs in leadership come from doing the work to know ourselves more. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think number one is recognizing in ourselves and in our team members that we all struggle with the curse of not being enough and the self-doubts that come up for everybody. We all have limiting beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about what we're capable of or not capable of. And we have some form of the limiting belief, I'm not good enough. And so during my journey, I have done the work and I continue to do the work to dig into what's going on there for me, exploring my limiting beliefs, exploring my blind spots, and overall getting to know myself more, knowing what my weaknesses are, which I think is just as powerful as understanding what our strengths are. And in my book, I talk about one of my limiting beliefs is that I'm not smart enough, which is completely crazy to think about now, but it was something that stuck with me even throughout college and into my early career. And I'm not smart enough. And so what I would do in having this belief is that I would try harder and I would set out to try to prove otherwise, right? And over time, finally understanding that this is a limiting belief for me. It's not true. It's something I made up as a child. And what I have found in doing the work to know myself has allowed for personal transformation and breakthroughs, because once you understand yourself, your limiting beliefs, your blind spots, you can then choose to not let them stop you. Like you could even still believe them, but just not let them stop you. So the other thing that I want to share about this is that being able to do the work myself has allowed me as a leader to have more empathy for others and to understand that others also struggle with self-doubt. And so whether it's the people that I'm leading or those that I train and coach, I help them explore this for themselves, because I can help. I've been there, so I can help them through the journey of identifying their limiting beliefs, self-doubts, and through empathy and grace, help them along their journey to self-knowledge and transformation. And I think the message that I'd like to leave those in attendance today is start with yourself, do the inner work yourself. And then that way you're going to be able to be a better leader, because you're going to be able to successfully lead others through their own transformations and breakthroughs, which ultimately make us better performers, and help and coach your team members to become leaders themselves.
Right. I completely agree with that. I think it's so important for the leaders to do their own work on themselves, not only for the reasons that you've mentioned, which are all very true, but also because we can see through false leadership. We can see if someone's presenting, but they haven't done their own work, it shows in some way. And so one of the ways that we are more effective as leaders is in being able to project the work that we've done on ourselves. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now, many in our audience are not, well, at least not yet CEOs. Some of them are on their way up. You refer to leading up. What do you mean by that? Can you share your thoughts about that approach?
Yeah, for sure. So it's common understanding that leadership comes from any level in the organization, whether top down, bottom up, or peer to peer. And I think for leaders who are on a leadership path and they're on their journey of moving up, it's important where they're at now to be proactive with respect to working with your boss or the person you directly report to. And I think I think being proactive instead of, I think often people take the lead from their boss, right? Their boss is the leader. So they take the
Right.
lead from their boss. They look to their boss for direction.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have to remember is that obviously different people have different leadership styles, and your boss is also very likely busy and oversees not just you, but others as well. And so what I like to suggest in taking a proactive approach of leading up
Mm-hmm.
is ensuring yourself that you and your boss create a strong relationship, that you take it on to make sure that you get to know your boss and that your boss gets to know you. If that isn't necessarily happening, or if it is happening, obviously, then it's a joint effort. But definitely be proactive in that. And then also be proactive in understanding what your role is and what the expectations that your boss has for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not clear on expectations, then my approach would be to ask for those expectations and to ask for regular feedback on where you're meeting expectations and where you're not. And this can actually be refreshing for your boss and actually make their job easier if you take the lead here, because one, you're making it a priority for you, and so they can actually take on their other priorities. And number two, because they see that you don't shy away from these conversations on expectations and feedback. And I think we can all relate to, not really wanting to deliver feedback and having those difficult conversations. It's, human nature to want to put those conversations off. So in leading up, if you make it easier for your boss, then you're likely to find more success in your current position, which then allows you to continue on your path of becoming a leader yourself and looking ahead at future leadership roles.
Mm-hmm.
Because you ensure a strong relationship with your boss and you ensure you're getting what you need in terms of expectations and feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And so it leads into my next question, Shanda, because you actually just touched on it. In line with the keys of today's master training event, you refer to the importance of relationships in the foundation for successful leadership. What keys to relationship can you share?
Yeah, so definitely what you just said, like for me, truly agree with that. Strong relationships are the foundation for effective leadership. And if you don't have relationships or you don't have strong trust-based relationships, you won't be as effective. And so one of the things I like people to imagine is that you have a new person assigned to your team and you make like no attempt to create a relationship with that person. Mm-hmm. How do you think it would go the first time you needed to give him or her feedback or had to address, an expectation that wasn't quite right? And so early in my career, I actually had a situation where I had a new member of my team and I didn't yet understand the importance of relationship building. And about a month after being assigned to my team, and let's call him Robert. So a month after Robert was assigned to my team, I needed to deliver some constructive feedback. And I really didn't want to have this conversation. I dragged my feet, but I finally had the conversation. It was very uncomfortable. It was an uncomfortable experience, not only for me, but probably for him as well. And I now know that the reason having that conversation was so uncomfortable was I didn't really know Robert. We didn't have a relationship. And this can, be applied to most anything. But now that once I learned that and understanding how important building relationships are, what I realized was when you get to know someone and you let them get to know you on a personal level, it helps to create understanding. And understanding someone creates respect for that person. And knowing and understanding someone also helps create authentic and caring connection with others. And we are more likely also to care about the people that we know. So the people that we know the most, we care about the most.
Mhm.
And we interact with our team members most every day. And so if we put the time into building and tending those relationships, then our ability to communicate, work together, and learn together will improve. If we have time, I can kind of talk a little bit about how I go about creating those relationships.
Well, actually, that was in line with my next question, which
Okay.
is how does a leader create a great team? I'm assuming that's what you're leading up to, sort of.
Yeah, so I could start with the foundation of relationships. And so usually what I do with a new team or a new person assigned to my team is the way I see it is it's very similar to the relationships that we have with our friends or family. Consider that the strength of those relationships is usually correlated with the amount of quality time that you spend with them. Now, obviously, our professional relationships must be kept professional and we have work to get done, so we won't have a lot of time. But we do need to, again, back to the word intentional, we need to intentionally carve out some quality one-on-one time with each one of our team members and make relationship building one of our top priorities. And I think the best way to get to know someone and understand them is to ask them to share their life story. So one of the things I do when I first meet someone that I'm working with for the first time is sometimes I even set a clock on my phone. So for 60 seconds, share with me your life story. And then I take turns and then I share mine. And then after that, obviously, then you can continue the conversation and then ask follow-up questions and get to know each other even more. And, you know, more than likely, every person you're going to have some sort of thing that you can connect with them on, whether you have some connection to their hometown or a sports team or whatever, or some related shared experience. And I think, too, when someone's sharing with you, it's super important that you really listen and you ask, you know, additional follow-up questions. And then also, in terms of learning about their life story, in addition to that, you want to learn also about who they are in terms of how they see what their goals are. Maybe ask them where do they want to be in 5 years. So kind of get at what their aspirations are, their goals. And as you're listening, really suspend judgment, show empathy, and focus on listening.
Do you find that you have any difficulty when you ask? I would imagine if you ask people to tell you about their life, that you might get some resistance to that. What's your experience?
I haven't had that, and I think people can share what they want to share and not share the things they don't want to share. And then the other thing I wanted to mention actually is that as the leader, or even if you're a peer, as you're sharing your story, like, it's important to be able to feel like you can be vulnerable and share. Like I've found, and another thing as it relates to building trust is, and obviously it took me a while to get to that place, but I like to be vulnerable and I like to share what I see as my weaknesses, things that I'm wanting to improve in, my future goals and what I think I need to do to get there. And I often ask my team members, this is one thing I'm working on. And I actually ask their support and giving me feedback on how I'm doing in that area. And also I will share mistakes that I've made. I share lots of stories, lots of examples, so that they can see that I'm coming from a place of being open and honest. And hopefully then that helps them then be able to be more open and be more vulnerable in their sharing with me.
Yeah, that's great. You're being a great model for them.
Yeah.
Very, very good. So again, we've touched on this, but can you share how really good leaders give feedback? And can you give some examples?
Yeah. So the most critical thing that I see about feedback is that it needs to be tied to a previously expressed expectation. So it always starts with being super clear on your expectations. And then the feedback is linked to how well someone is meeting that expectation and where they need to improve to better meet the expectation. And for me, once I made that connection, feedback sessions became so much easier because, well, number one, having the foundation of building relationship, like I said, and then number two, having set expectations, being super clear about your expectations. So when you then have that feedback conversation, it always links back to the expectation. And so you set the context and you say, okay, I'd like to talk to you about this expectation, and you go, definitely don't skip on where they're actually meeting it. And then share and say, I'm going to share areas where you're meeting the expectations, and then I'm going to share some areas where I can see some improvement that you could make. And so that's really my approach and what I share with others in terms of having those more effective feedback conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, that it's so important when you're giving feedback to start by doing something that connects you with the other person, something that helps them feel, okay, this is safe, so that when you give them something that may be more difficult for them to hear, they don't automatically become defensive and make it more difficult for them to take it in.
Yeah, and another thing that comes up a lot, and this is another way to build trust, is that inevitably you're going to have forgotten to give a certain expectation, right? So all of a sudden you see someone whose performance is not quite right or something, and then you realize I need to have a conversation with them, but I actually never gave them that expectation. And so to build trust is to actually own it and say, look, I just realized I never gave you this expectation. I'm going to give it now, and then, move on from there.
Yeah. So again, it's what's beautiful is that a lot of the lessons from my conversation with you fall into alignment with what some of the other speakers have said about trust and honesty and not lying, not making believe, but being right up front. So these definitely are resonating in terms of qualities of leadership.
Great. Yeah.
Can you give some examples of how good leaders create high performance?
Yeah, so high performance definitely comes from, and I've heard, other speakers today talk about this. You also want to have members of the team who are, say, in a peer-to-peer role to also have good relationships. And so you, as the leader, sort of facilitating strong relationships, facilitating an understanding of what each person's role is, what the expectations are. And then for me, I think my experience of getting a team to high performance is, even if you're not in a project management based environment, you kind of take the principles of project management, where I like to schedule like weekly team meetings, even if they're really short, even if it's just 15 minutes, quick check-ins, so that people can basically, what I like to do is have people set goals for the week. And then when we meet once a week, we talk about, okay, each person goes around like a round robin and shares, okay, here's what I was able to accomplish. I set this goal. I'm 3/4 there. Here's the obstacles I ran into. And then the team can help support that person on if they need help moving forward. And it creates an accountability structure.
Mhm.
And then the team together creates the goals for the next week.
Mhm.
And so, and then also at those team meetings, if there's time, maybe once a month during one of those meetings, you continue to incorporate some team building work for people to better get to know each other.
Mhm.
I know there's some, controversy around Myers-Briggs and personality tests and preferences and things like that, but I really like to pick something that we can all sort of share, whether it's Myers-Briggs or something else, and just share from that how we like to best work, what our preferences are, if we're introverts or extroverts, and how we kind of, negotiate with each other on how we want to work best together. And so really structurally, it comes down to those weekly team meetings for me, and setting goals and having accountability.
That's great. And of course, having those meetings really further supports relationship, which helps the best interactions between team members.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been a pleasure, Shanda, to have this conversation with you. I really appreciate it, and appreciate all of your words of wisdom about leadership and about relationship and about where you come from to help get the best results. So I want to thank you for participating in this program. Very informative. And I will look forward to the next time that you and I can do something like this again.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Right. And everybody go to Shanda's part of the page and check out her book and all the information other information she has to offer, as well as her website. Thanks again, Shanda.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.